Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good day, and I hope everybody's ready for some jalapenos. I have a bunch of jalapenos here that I've got to get put up, and I'm going to make some jalapeno relish. A couple of months ago, I made some cowboy candy, and for those of you that don't know what cowboy candy is, it's usually just jalapenos that are done in a sweet brine, like a syrup, and it makes a sweet relish, but it's got one heck of a kick to it. And it's usually made, like I said, with all jalapenos. But I am a big baby when it comes to heat, and I don't want it to kill me. My husband likes it where it's pretty warm, hot to me. So I thought, well, I was going to try to find a happy medium. So I was going to do, or I did do, half jalapenos and half these sweet peppers then they're pretty too. So I did half and half. I absolutely loved it, and let me show you. I have a jar here so you can see what it looks like when it's all canned up. It's so good and it's pretty. I've used it on just about everything. Last night we made tacos, and it was awesome on tacos. I've done it on my breakfast burritos. It's just a really good condiment to have on anything, and I really want to try it in some cornbread, to make some Mexican cornbread. I just think that sounds like it would be really good. So that's down the road. However, I'm completely out of mine, and so I'm going to be making some of mine, but I'll probably do that on another video. But my husband liked the idea of the relish, but he didn't want the sweet at all. So he doesn't really care for the sweet on like a burger or anything like that. And that's what he wants it on. He wants to be able to kind of smear something on, like a layer on something, or dollop a little bit on tacos or burritos or nachos, things like that. So I went looking, and they're actually kind of hard to find. Most recipes that you see that are for a relish type thing, that all have sugar in them. So I'm kind of going off a little bit here. I did find a couple of videos where people did about the same thing. So I'm basically going to do like canned jalapenos, but instead of doing them in the slices, I'm going to chop mine up and do like a diced. So I think he'll like that a lot better. I asked him, and he would prefer the diced over the sliced. So you can do them either way, however you want. I'm going to dice mine. So all you're going to need for this is, of course, jalapenos. I've got my cutting board, my knife. The most important thing, I have my cup of coffee. So I should be good to go. So all I'm going to do is kind of slice them in big chunks, and then I'm going to blitz them in my food processor to get them down a little bit finer, and then go from there. Now, just a word of warning, when I did my last one for the cowboy candy, I did not wear gloves. And let me tell you, I didn't think that it was really going to bother me that bad. I mean, I've cut several jalapenos before, and it's never bothered me. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, I was on fire for an entire day. It was miserable. So word of warning for anybody, if you're going to be doing all of the cutting, dicing, anything like that, do yourself a favor and get you a pair of gloves. Since I'm going to let the ninja do the majority of the work, all I'm going to do is cut these into huge chunks. I'm not going to worry about it, and we'll see. I may come to regret that, but I want to see. I hate working in gloves. They drive me absolutely nuts. So I'm going to try not to do that. However, if I ever do them by hand again, I will fight the gloves. So just word of warning, if that's you've been warned. That's all I can tell you. So, okay, all I'm going to do, and I've kind of found my own little hack, my own hack, if that's what you want to call it. Let me bring you down a little bit closer so you can see. A little bit better what I'm doing here. So, I have found the cheater's way of doing this and not really touching the juice when it cuts. So, I'll take my jalapeno and hold it on the stem end, and I'll cut it just almost down to the stem, all the way down, and then I'll turn it and do the same thing like that, and then all I'm doing is cutting right there so that it gives me my 4 little pieces, and I haven't had to touch much there. And then I throw that away. Actually, that goes over there. So it's kind of a silly little thing, but a lot of you may have known that. However, I didn't. I've been touching them and all that, and one day I thought, well, dadgum, God gives you a handle to hold those things, so why am I not using it? So I did, and lo and behold, it doesn't burn me as bad. So that's what I did. I'm going to take these and then I'm going to throw them in the food processor and chop them up, and let's get going. I'm going to show you. So this is about how I have it chopped up. So not super small. You don't want to puree it, but you want a fine grind. Okay. I'm going to stop right there with my peppers. I'm going to save these to do my cowboy candy. I want to save enough of those to put in my cowboy candy that'll be coming up in another video. But this is what we came up with. A huge bowl of just finely diced jalapenos. And I would say that's probably about, I don't know, between 4 and 5 pounds of jalapenos. This is going to make quite a bit. And I didn't want to do a huge batch, and just in case he doesn't like it. So that's what it is. Next, we're going to move over to the stove and we're going to get our brine going. So I'll meet you at the stove. Okay, so we're over at the stove. We want to get our brine going. I'm just going to do a very simple brine that doesn't have really anything in it. It's going to be the recipe, and you can make it a little at a time. I'm going to make a small batch. You can make as much or as little as you want, just depending on how much you want, but I'm going to try not to have a whole lot left over. So the recipe is 2 cups of water to 2 cups of white vinegar and 2 tablespoons of either canning or kosher salt. I don't have either one of them today, so I'm going to use, I have pink Himalayan salt here, so I'm going to use that. Just make sure that you do not use just regular iodized table salt. But from what I've read, it doesn't really ruin your food, but the iodine that they put in there to iodize it can turn your vegetables and everything that you're canning weird colors. So it's not very appetizing. And I believe that there's something with it can cloud your brines and things like that and just not look very pretty in the jar because they have an anti-caking something in there. I'm not really sure what it is that does that. So just don't use iodized salt, just your regular table salt. Don't use that. You want to make sure that you either have canning salt, kosher salt, or I'm going to use the pink Himalayan today. So I'm going to double my recipe because I've got quite a few peppers to do. And also, if you're doing slices instead of the diced, it won't take quite as much brine. It'll take pretty close, but not quite as much, and you'll see why. So when you're packing your jars with your peppers and they're sliced, you want to pack the peppers in there because the rings will allow the brine to get all in and cover everything. Where with the diced and this real finely chopped peppers, you don't want to pack that in there because you need that brine to get all in your peppers to can them correctly. So with that being said, I'm going to get the brine going. I've just got my pan here. I'm going to bring you just a little bit closer. So I'm going to put 2 cups of water. Actually, I'm gonna double it for me. So I'm going to do 4 cups of water, but just so you know the recipe, and I will put the recipe down in the description box. So I have my 4 cups of water. Oops, I got a flick of pepper in there. 4 cups of white vinegar. And then I'm going to do 4 teaspoons of the salt. And just kind of whisk this together. And we want to bring this to a boil. Okay, now one more thing that I forgot to mention when I was cutting the peppers. I left the seeds in there. We want it, or my husband wants it really hot, so I let the seeds in there. That's totally up to you if you want to remove the seeds. That's up to you. I left them in. And I do the same thing on the cowboy candy also. Anyway, so that's one thing. And another, when you are pulling that out of the, if you're using a food processor, be very careful, because a couple of times I got very close and the fumes off of it, the smell off of it will just take your breath away, and it made me cough a couple of times and sneeze a couple of times. So just be careful and be warned when you take the lid off of that. And even just a second ago, I was sitting here just kind of stirring these around, and it did the same thing to me. So just kind of watch that as you're going. So all I'm doing is just waiting on this to come to a boil. Now I already have my jars are washed, and I have them in my oven. My oven is set at 240 degrees. It just kind of keeps them sterilized. I can put them in there and they can stay sterilized. Now when you are water bath canning, you want to make sure your jars are sterilized first. So if you're pressure canning, it doesn't really matter, because it's usually in there for so long that it sterilizes as it's pressurizing also. But just make sure that your jars are sterilized. Make sure they're clean, washed, and you're going to keep them warm, and find some way you can put them in your water bath canner and leave them in there, boil them. I think it's 10 minutes. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up, whatever the time is for them to sterilize. But just make sure that your jars are sterilized, especially for water bath canning, because we're just not processing them that long. These are only processing for 10 minutes, so it won't take too long. So I've got all of that going. I have my lids here, and the new lids, they say that you do not have to soak these in hot water, and I have not been doing that. But I've also had every time I've canned here recently, I've always got 1 or 2 jars that don't seal, and I don't know why. I'm very meticulous when I check my jars to make sure there's no chips around the rims. I clean them really well before I put my lids on. I've done everything, and I don't really know why. I'm trying to be really accurate on my headspace in my jars as well, so I don't really know why some of my lids are not doing that. I have heard that some of the cheaper brands of lids, some of the off brands, are not sealing as well. And to be honest, I have not paid attention to what brands I was using. However, this time I am using they are Ball. I am doing that, and I am going to put them in a little pan of water and put them on my stove while I'm getting my jars ready, just so that they can kind of sit and simmer. And I'm going to try it this way and see if this helps. I don't know. I know that there are some people that still swear by it and they won't do it any other way. But the new lids, you're not supposed to do that. Used to, you had to soak all of your lids, and I don't know when that changed, but it's been a few years from my understanding that you're not supposed to have to do that. So I don't know. I'm going to try it. I know that there are a lot of people that still do, just because they like it. They like that technique and they continue to do it. So I'm going to see if that helps. So all I'm going to do, I have them in just my little pan here, and I'm just going to put just enough water on there to cover it, and I'm going to turn it. I'm probably going to turn it on fairly high right at first, just to get the water hot, and then I'm going to turn it way down. I don't want it to cook. I don't want it to boil. I don't want it to do anything. I just want it to keep them, I want them to be warm, and that's really it. They'll be too hot to touch. You can use a little magnet or something to pull them out. And they do make a magnet specifically for canning and for pulling the lids out. I don't have one of those, so I'm going to try to use a makeshift something on my refrigerator that I can use to pull those out, because they will be hot. Or you can just use a pair of tongs or something to pull them out one at a time. So let me get these. My timer's going off. Let me get some water put on these right quick. See, that's it. Just a little bit of water to cover them. Okay, this is slowly starting to come to a boil. I'm going to grab my jars out right quick. Another thing to remember, if you're pulling your jars out while you're keeping them warm, you do not want to set them directly on your countertop. You don't want that heat to hit the cold. You'll crack your jars and then you've lost a lot of money. So just remember to make sure you put them on a towel or something to keep them from hitting your cold countertops. Okay, my brine is boiling here. Let's see if you can see that. It's boiling here. So now I'm just going to turn my fire down to about, I don't know, I want it to just kind of simmer. I don't really want it to sit there and boil. You don't want to keep boiling your vinegar like that. So I'm just going to turn it way down and just let it sit here and simmer while we're getting the rest of our stuff together here for our jars. So I'm just going to use my funnel and I'm going to start putting in my jalapenos here. Let's see if I can get y'all a little closer. Okay, so like I said a minute ago, when you are doing your sliced peppers, you want to fill that jar all the way to the 1/2 inch headspace. But because I'm doing the diced, you only want to fill them about 3/4 of the way full. So don't pack your peppers down in there. Leave it about 3/4 of the way full. Okay, now all I'm going to do is just spoon my brine in. And I want to fill it to a 1/2 inch headspace. And you want to debubble them just to get all the bubbles out. And see, look, what you want is so that when I'm moving this around, you can, oops, sorry, not right there. When you're swishing this around, you want that brine to get all the way down in there. You want it to completely, you want that movement in there. You want that brine to get all around your peppers. So that's why you only want your jars about 3/4 full, so that brine can really soak in. So once you pour a little bit of the brine in, get your debubbler and just kind of swish it around like that, and you'll see how much the liquid has gone down. So I want to get my brine and fill it up to that 1/2 inch headspace. I want to make sure that it's at 1/2 inch headspace. Right about there. And we're just going to keep doing that to all of these. Now, one more thing I didn't add is a lot of the recipes call for I believe it's a teaspoon or so when you're making your brine for one recipe, a teaspoon or two of turmeric, of garlic powder. There's several things you can add to them if you want the extra flavor in there. I want to do these just plain this time. I want to see how my husband likes it, see if this is the consistency and everything that he wants, and then we'll kind of go for it. Plus, he's not huge on turmeric unless I'm making like curries and things like that. He doesn't really care for it just in everything. So I did leave that out this time. However, I may try adding the garlic to it, because as everybody knows, I love garlic, and so does he. So that may be something we add at a later point, but this time I'm just doing it very, very plain. So we're just going to keep filling up these jars. Okay, next you want to clean off your lids. Very good. Use your vinegar. Get you a little bowl or something. I didn't get a little bowl out, so we're just going to do it this way. Just make sure that your rims are all clean. You don't want any little granules of salt, any liquid, anything like that. Anything that's going to prevent that sealing. You don't want to go through all this work and then have a jar not seal because you didn't take the time to clean. So this is super, super important. Okay, then I'm going to dish out my lids here. And they're super hot. Just going to put a lid on each one here. They are very hot, so be very, very careful. Use the magnet. I didn't get one, so I'm just being silly here. And then your rings. Your rings, put them on fingertip tight. So don't crank down on them, just get them where they're snug. You don't want them to be too tight, because it can sometimes, you want it to be loose enough so that the steam can escape, because you want it to push. That's what you're doing, is pushing all of that air out. So you don't want it so tight that the air can't escape, because it will bubble your lids and totally run your lids and could possibly bust your jar. So fingertip tight. And then I'm going to put them in my canner here. I'm just going to set them in here for right now. And I'm going to get a couple more jars out. And I forgot, I ran out of brine. I wasn't sure that was going to be enough. I should have gone ahead and tripled my recipe, and I didn't, so I'm completely out, and I forgot I should have already had this going. I'm going to mix up one more batch of brine. Okay, I got all my jars. Get them all loaded into the canner. One thing I forgot to do, let me show you the canner. Your vinegar, if you will pour just, I don't know, about that much into your water. it will keep that white, ugly film off of your jars when they're done canning. So I forgot to add that earlier, so I'm glad I remembered it just now. I mean, it's not hard. You can just wash your jars later, but you know how it gets that white kind of film, almost like some of the stuff that you get out of your dishwasher and stuff. It'll do that when you can, but if you put that little bit of vinegar in there, it'll stop that. So let me get this last jar in here. Get y'all a better angle. You want at least an inch of water over the top of your jars. I thought I had enough in there. I'm a little bit shy, so I'm going to add some. If you have to add water, I've just had this sitting here getting warm, so it's not boiling or anything like that. It's just getting warm. So I'm going to add some hot water from my tap. If this was boiling or any hotter, and honestly I should have had just an extra pan of water going in the back, so that you're pouring the same temperature. You do not want to pour cold water in here, especially when your jars are in here. It will crack your jars and you will ruin everything that you've got. So I'm going to pour some in here, and I've just kind of, whenever I've had to do this, I just pour it along the edge and kind of pour it onto the side of the pan so that it's not actually pouring onto the jar. Let me grab some water. Okay, so now that I've got my water on there, I'm going to move this right quick, and I'm going to pull this over here. So on my stove, that burner would eventually boil, but it would take it forever to do it. So I just moved it over to the bigger burner now that I'm done with it from using this. So all I'm going to do is I need this to come to a rolling boil. So I'm going to let this sit here for just a few minutes, and I will come back. I'm going to clean up my mess here, and I will come back as soon as this is at a rolling boil. Okay, so my pot has come to a boil. Once it has come to a boil, I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. Now that is for my altitude here. I'm in Texas. I'm in East Texas. So just check your altitude where you live, and it will tell you, and you can go on to, I believe it's the USDA site, and you can find where yours are. But for me, it's 10 minutes, so I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And I'm going to put the lid on it, and then I'm going to leave it. We'll come back when my timer goes off. I'm just going to turn it off. Okay, my timer just went off. They have been boiling for 10 minutes. I'm just going to turn my timer off, and I'm going to turn my fire off and take the lid off. And I'm just going to let those sit there for a second. And while they're sitting there, I wanted to go over a couple of things that I forgot or whatever. One is that I did not, if you noticed, I had some jalapenos left in the bottom of that bowl. They're not going to waste. I put them here, and I'm sure my husband will put these on who knows what. He puts them on everything. We have jalapenos for every meal. One more thing that I learned just by mistake, I always make extra jars because I never know how many jars I'm going to need. As soon as I guess a number, I'm going to be wrong. So I always try to do a few extras just in case, to have them ready in case it makes more than what I'm thinking. And this time it did, so I had 3 extra lids in there. As soon as you are done and you realize you're not going to use these, take these out of the water and dry them. I have lost several lids. These rust so fast. I mean, within 15-20 minutes these things will have rust on them, and once they're rusted, they're no good. You're just gonna have to throw them away or just use them for dry goods, things like that. You can't can with them once they're rusted. So just as a tip, as soon as you are done, if you realize you are done with your lids and you have extra in water, get them out and dry them, and then you can put them up wherever. One more thing is the process time on this and the sterilizing of the jars. So I wanted to clarify, because technically, since these processed in boiling water for 10 minutes, that sterilizes the jar. For me, it's just a personal preference. If I am water bath canning, I'm going to sterilize my jars first. They will be sterilized when I put my product into it. That's totally up to you. That's however you want to do it. If you're processing for anything less than 10 minutes at a boil, you need to sterilize your jars first for sure. But like I said, for me, even if this was going to be processing for 15 minutes, I would still sterilize my jars first. That's just my personal preference. I don't do it if I'm pressure canning, but if I am water bath canning, I do. So that's just me. So now that these have sat here for just a couple of minutes, it doesn't take long. Really all I'm doing is letting most of the steam escape so I'm not burning myself when I'm pulling these out. And just so that they kind of get somewhat acclimated, you know, the colder air is in here. So all I'm going to do is take them out. Same thing as before. Do not place your hot jars directly on your countertop. You want something, a towel or something like that, to set them on so that they don't crack. So all I'm going to do is lift these out of here. And there's always water on the very top. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can bring this over here and show you. There's always water on the very top of the jar. Just leave it there. It'll dry on its own. I try not to tip the jars. I did that in the beginning where I would kind of tip them a little bit to run the water off of them. But I've learned since then that if that lid has not completely sealed yet, I could be putting product into there and it won't allow the jar to seal, the lid to seal. So I've stopped doing that. I've just picked them up and it does evaporate off. And if it doesn't, when they're cool enough, then I just get a paper towel and I dab them and get it off. So otherwise, all I'm going to do is just bring these over here and set them to the side. So I'm just going to leave these sitting here. You don't want to touch them or move them. Leave them where you've got an inch or so between them, so you don't want them to touch while they're on the cabinet. Don't touch them. Don't just leave them there for 12 to 24 hours, right around there. You don't want to move them or anything. If when you get them out, sometimes the rings have loosened, leave them alone. Don't mess with them. Just leave them on there, and it'll do its own thing. So then after 12, 24 hours, you can get them, wipe them down, clean them off, and then you can write on your jars what you have in there and store them. But that's it. That is the peppers. They look really good. I'm really proud of them. I hope they turn out good. I hope my husband likes them because this made 9 pints. Look how pretty. See how the water it has separated and the water is down there at the bottom. It looks really good. So anyway, I wasn't expecting it to make that much. And normally I would make those probably in like a 1/2 pint jar. That's probably better for how we eat it. But I'm completely out of 1/2 pints, so I'm doing them in the pint jars this time. But that's it. So we'll see how he likes it. Hopefully he likes it, and I'll probably give a few of them away. But I'll give you an update and let you know how he likes it, because if it's something that he does, I'll keep these on hand. And then I know he wanted me to try one that had a mix of garlic, onions, and things in it. So I'm going to look up recipes and see what I can find there and try some of those. But for now, that's it. That is our jalapeno relish without the sugar. And that's it for now. So we'll see you next time. And I did not say at the beginning of this video that I'm Jenny and this is WTF Homestead. So I appreciate you guys watching my video, and I would appreciate you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and we will see you on the next video. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.